Seltzer Kings.
Podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. Underwear drawers are like the Wild West. You never know what you're going to pull out or what shape it's in. So upgrade your collection with the buttery soft comfort of MeUndies. MeUndies' signature fabric is as soft as a warm hug from your favorite sweater. Plus, it's breathable and oh so comfy, making it ideal for all-day wear. Get 20% off your first order, plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/Spotify with code SPOTIFY. That's MeUndies.com/Spotify, code SPOTIFY.
So, you just started using LinkedIn Premium. Now what? Well, on your premium company page, you noticed around 7.5 times more page engagement and 5 times more page views. Well done. And now, new clients are messaging you. All because you're using LinkedIn Premium, which helps you get the business growth you want. Think big, small business. Think big. Start your free trial at linkedin.com/premium small business. That's linkedin.com/premium small business.
Oh, please, Gavin, I've seen an English romance novel. It's just a tubby, balding guy dipping his scone in his tea. Ass.
The following podcast contains
You used to be a kind, loving man, and now you're a foul-mouthed monster.
explicit language.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast that asks a simple question. When you tried to make me believe that you couldn't believe it's not butter, when all along you knew it wasn't butter, what the hell were you thinking? I'm your host, Dave Bledsoe, and this is episode number 480 of the Find Me Fabio edition of the show, where we talk about the heartthrob of the 1990s, Fabio Fanzoni. Stay tuned. The What the Hell Are You Thinking podcast is brought to you by Gordon's Goose Guard. When it comes to goose protections, what's good for the goose is also good for the gander. Are you struggling with angry, hissing birds terrorizing your property and pooping all over the place? Then you need Gordon's Goose Guard. Our trained goose guardians will safely, humanely, and effectively manage your geese problem, employing a mix of high-tech prowess and generations of goose wrangling know-how. We employ everything from synthetic repellent sprays to subsonic goose annoying sound waves to geese herding dogs to keep the geese from gobbling up your property. Say goodbye to goose turds and say hello to Gordon's Goose Guard.
The coaster collision that had the whole country talking. And it all happened right in our backyard.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Schramm in the Pilot Newsroom with a
1999, one of the big talkers at the time, was opening day at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg.
This season, visitors can ride a new hypercoaster called Apollo's Chariot.
13 News Now was there to capture all the excitement surrounding the new coaster. We expected the thrills. And a special guest certainly boosted the coverage. None other than romance cover model and international sex symbol, Fabio.
I want to thank everybody for coming.
But no one expected what happened next. Escorted by goddesses in costume, Fabio was Apollo himself, taking off on a picture-perfect day for the inaugural ride. Then, in a bizarre turn of events, Fabio returned with a face covered in blood. During the ride, the model came face-to-face, literally, with a goose, slamming into it at 73 miles per hour.
You might find this hard to believe these days, but once upon a time, I was what the kids today would call a total snack.
Like a Twinkie?
No, like a young, in-shape, totally fuckable guy.
Sure, Dave. Sounds great.
Seriously, when I came out of basic training, I was lean, clean, cut, and all my acne cleared up because I wasn't eating shit food all the time, so, goddamn, y'all should have seen me. I even had something that resembled a nice butt.
Let's not get carried away.
Fine, I at least had a butt then. I had that wholesome middle America look that made older women swoon. Women my own age could take me or leave me, but women in their late 30s and early 40s were like,
Damn, girl. Break me off a piece of that.
I was still far too young and naive to understand how valuable this power was. Like, I believed in things like romance and true love instead of getting freaky while her husband is on deployment sex. If you really wanted to know where I could have racked up, I would have needed to have been gay. Because, pod friends, young me would have been a stellar twink.
I'm sorry? What was that again?
A twink! I was young. I wasn't buff, but I was in good shape. I'm not a hirsute man, so I'm pretty hairless, and I would have looked good. oiled up in some short shorts dancing for all the boys. My God, I could have run wild through the gay men who like their lovers in the style.
You're not gay.
Sadly, no, I'm just saying if I were, I would have fucked a lot. But being straight, very homophobic, and incredibly shelters, I had to settle for a lot less sex. Of course, as the years went by, I lost that youthful figure, mostly because of,
Bear's nice.
I love bear.
I became a bit more weathered, lost that innocent farm boy charm that would have made me such a hit with all the bears, and settled into the not fat but fat adjacent man that I was for most of my late 20s and into my early 40s. And now, of course, I am just,
No, he's just fat.
I will sometimes look back on that youthful twink of a boy and wonder what it might have been like if I'd been a little more worldly, a little more adventurous.
Only gayer.
Yeah, I think of all the fun I could have had. But hey, at least older women, they've never stopped liking me. It's just now that many of them are at a retirement age, and finding a private spot in the old folks' home can be difficult. But still, at least I never became so famous for my good looks that I had to be the face of fake butter, and I never got hit in the face by a goose on a roller coaster. Which brings me to this week's topic. A man so hot, he became synonymous with romance, sex, and fake butter in the 1990s. Fabio Fanzoni. You might remember him from such romance novel covers as The Warrior's Woman, Iron Sword, Hearts Aflame, or Love Storm. Because when a trashy romance novel came out in the 90s, our man Fabio was probably on its cover. So let's you and I meet this hunk of man meat. Now, before we begin, you're probably asking, Dave, what do you know about romance novels?
No one said that.
And it turns out I don't know absolutely nothing. But I have a small staff of probably imaginary researchers to find out about things so I could tell you about them.
You don't have to. You really don't have to.
While humans have been telling stories for as long as we've been using words, novels came around rather later in our timeline. The generally accepted first true novel, an extended work of narrative fiction written in print, was made in the 11th century Japan, was called The Tale of Genji, and it was written by a woman by the name of Murasaki Shikibu. The English translation, which I was supposed to read for a book club once but didn't because it's a doorstop of a fucking book, clocking in over 1,000 pages, is full of things like
fencing, fighting, torture, revenge, giants, monsters, chases, escapes, true love, miracles.
At least it might be. I really don't know. I took one look at that thing and just pieced the fuck out. The first modern novel was written in Spain around 1605 by Miguel Cervantes. You guys have heard of this. It's called Don Quixote, or more properly, the ingenious gentleman Don Quixote of La Mancha, which again featured
fencing, fighting, torture, revenge, giants, monsters, chases, escapes, true love, miracles.
Only in this case, it was just an old man imagining doing all those things. One of the first romance novels, which included probably fencing and fighting, but probably not so much on the true love, and definitely not on the fucking, was penned in 1740 by a cat named Samuel Richardson, titled Pamela, or Virtue Rewarded, in which, according to frictionlit.org, quote, a young woman tries to resist giving her virginity to a wealthy landowner, unquote. But it was Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility in 1811 that established the romance novel's primary tropes, but most importantly, that women were entirely capable of writing an actual novel for themselves that men would only read because they were forced to in an English lit class some centuries later.
What a pig.
Upper-class women's lives in those days were deeply circumscribed. Not that lower-class women were more free, it's just that no one gave a shit about them enough to write down their stories.
Unlike in today's gynocracy.
As a class, upper and middle class women were literate, bored, and books were there to fill the empty hours they didn't have to do things like work, raise children, cook, and clean, because they had poor women as servants to do all that. And those books had not a little wish fulfillment inside them.
You mean sex?
I mean, not at first. I mean, back in the early days, it was just being treated with something like a little human dignity. More from Frictionlit, quote, they offered a world previously unheard of. Women in romance novels had hopes and dreams that they strove for and achieved. Their romances often featured men who treated them, if not as equals, at least as real people, and who were very much in love with them. The heroines of romance novels experienced more to life than being a mother and housewife. Women of the 19th century wanted that, unquote. Centuries later, when the modern romance novel returned, post-World War II American women found themselves not unlike their 18th and 19th century predecessors, bored, trapped in a stultified life controlled by men and with a lot of time on their hands, that they again turn to romance novels to fill their unrequited longing for something other than their bland, suburban, middle American life. And it was a Canadian publisher that became the predominant player in this market.
She's been reading these Harlequin romance novels, you know.
Harlequin, a topic that should and will be a show all its own someday, but for now, let's just say that Harlequin created the aesthetic of the modern romance novel. Beautiful women and hunky men embracing on the covers, teasing the reader with the content inside. Because Harlequin had a decency code, the covers and the content of the books were tame, even tepid. They're the kind of thing your grandma could have lying around her house and not be scandalized by it. But in 1971, with the rise of feminism, the old Harlequin, fully clothed and no touching of the naughty places, wasn't selling like it used to. And Avon, yes, that Avon, the makeup company, who also had a print division, because of course they did, published Catherine Woodward's The Flame and the Flower, which became the first of a genre of romance novels called bodice rippers, because they were usually set in a historical period. And also, the protagonists, they did things.
Is this about SEX?
Oh, yes, because their characters fucked. And pod friends, they fucked well. This created a huge market for paperback romance novels. They were never pornographic, but they were quite titillating. And by the mid-1980s, the marketing departments of the publishers had developed their own idiom for the covers of the books. It went like this. A beautiful young woman dressed in revealing period clothing, her long hair spilling down her back, dress slid up to the waist, one leg revealed. There was a plunging neckline with a generous amount of side boob showing.
Side boob. I love that.
She would be swooning into the arms of an impossibly muscled man, either shirtless or his shirt torn open, showing his chiseled chest and washboard abs, the corded muscle of his impressive arms lifting the supine form of the young woman up in an embrace that is nearly a kiss, but not quite yet. And behind them, a Gothic castle, Victorian mansion, rolling fields, or a dark forest stretched into the distance, all in brilliant colors with a provocative title like Loins of Thunder embossed above. It is in these mass market paperbacks that we join our subject once again.
Wow, I had totally forgotten about him.
Fabio Fanzoni was born in 1959 in Milan, Italy. His father was an engineer and his mother managed the factory the family owned. The middle child, Fabio, was an altar boy. He got kicked out of school a few times for breaking the rules and served his mandatory time in the Italian army and began college but dropped out to move to the United States. With the exception of his time in the army, he always had his signature hair.
What hair?
As a man blessed to still have a full head of hair in his middle age and cursed with that hair being curly.
Like a girl.
Fuck you, Gavin. I have to say that Fabio's hair is fucking amazing. It just flows in the most aesthetically pleasing way down from the crown of his head, over his body, across his shoulders, and down his back. And I'm sure there's product involved, but I want to go on a record that it's entirely unfair for a man to be given that hair, that face, and that body when some of us would just kill to have even one of them. At 6'3", of course he's fucking 6'3", Fabio also put a lot of work into his body. He was and is, by every definition, a gym rat. The kind of dude who works out several times a day, never eats anything that tastes good, and spends a lot of time sweating and grunting impressively. He's also the kind of gym rat that's happy to tell you how he got swole and what you're doing wrong that makes you not swole at all, really. He told GQ magazine in 2016, quote, "Life could be as complicated as you want. If you complicate it," he says. "But if you keep your life simple, you get the best results." So his meals are pretty steady. Mornings with oatmeal and an omelet and fish and vegetables over the day. He stresses that only being healthy 2 months out of the year and eating like crap the other 10 isn't enough to really keep in shape, unquote. This regime got him his first modeling job at the age of 14 when photographers approached him while working out, and that led to a modeling contract in Italy. In 1980, with a body in place, Fabio was finally ready to move to the States to pursue a modeling career. Within 48 hours of arriving in America, Fabio had a modeling contract for the Ford agency, and he didn't have to do porn or anything.
That's so unfair.
Like, I want to believe that the dude had like a small dick, but come on. You know he's got a fucking hog leg. This show has discussed in depth the changing face of masculinity and the ideals of male beauty in America that began in the late 80s and early 90s in episode number 322. including a mathematical meta-analysis of the topic utilizing a sordid rumor about Rod Stewart that, in no false modesty, is some of the best work that I've ever done.
That's a plug.
So I won't dive too deep into it now. Suffice to say that Fabio's particular look blended the contemporary and the traditional, and he was clearly masculine.
Dude is ripped.
But with that long flowing hair, it shows a certain, not feminine, but not traditionally masculine energy too. It was exactly what the publishers of the burgeoning romance novel industry were looking for. I found this in a Duke University blog called Unsuitable, written by Ashley Rhea in 2023, titled simply Fabio. Quote, in the 1980s, an artist who worked on the cover designs for romance novels found Fabio's modeling portfolio. The artist found his photos captivating and used them as references for the cover artwork designs, leading Fabio to break into the romance fiction industry through modeling. By the 1990s, Fabio had been featured on multiple romance novel covers and had gained a significant fan base. The public was positively reacting to Fabio's covers to such an extent that Fabio was being covered in major news outlets, unquote. It's hard to explain Fabio's ubiquity even before he was actually ubiquitous. From fcornetmedia.net, quote, a major artist during this era was Elaine Dulio, who painted the most iconic and well-known romance covers, the Fabio covers. Fabio Fanzoni was a male model who appeared on the covers of over 466 romance novels throughout the span of the 1980s and 90s. Readers in this era were especially captivated by his long blonde hair, muscular physique, and defined jaw. The perfect picture of masculinity and sex appeal, unquote. And I mean, forget bookstores, pod friends, which were still a thing back then. You couldn't walk past a supermarket checkout stand without seeing Fabio's form on the cover of the Impulse Buy romance novels. With that kind of popularity, Fabio lookalikes began to adorn competitors' books. These were men who just looked enough like Fabio that you would have to do a side-by-side comparison to notice the difference. And by the time he retired, Fabio had appeared on 1,300 individual titles on romance novels alone. That's not counting his appearances in other media. Going back to the Unsuitable blog, quote, the public was positively reacting to Fabio's covers to such an extent that Fabio was being covered in the major news outlets. The Palm Beach Post, the New York Times, and the Los Angeles Times were some of the many media publications that covered Fabio and his covers in their prints, all of which detailed the amount of positive reception regarding Fabio's physical appearance in the cover artwork. In a Los Angeles Times article, a 32-year-old contractor named Jonathan was quoted saying, he's a guy blessed with a well-developed body. And Leslie Robinson, a 19-year-old college student at the time, was quoted as saying that, I mean, Fabio's body's great, unquote. Fabio was popping up on magazine covers, talked about on television, being referenced on the late-night shows, and becoming the it guy of the mid-1990s. And this sparked a bit of an inevitable backlash from dudes who looked nothing like Fabio, resenting the fact that Fabio looked like he did. Were there mutterings that this guy couldn't possibly be straight? Of course there were. I mean, I don't know how far they went outside of the circles that I hung out with, tubby guys that didn't look like anything like Fabio, that we would, roll our eyes at the People magazine covers and say things like, women, right? They love their pretty boys, and then we'd scratch our balls and order another beer because, we knew what women wanted. For all Fabio claimed not to even know he was a romance cover famous until after the fact, he was quick enough to capitalize on the fame when it came calling. Going back to Unsuitable, quote, after having his big break as a cover model for romance novels, Fabio began to capitalize on his fame. The support from his fans and the media, in addition to the income from his features on romance novel covers, gave him leeway to do so. Once his fame became apparent, Peter Paul, a Beverly Hills agent, began representing him and promoting Fabio to a wider audience. A publicity piece addressing the readers of the Los Angeles Times in 1993 begins with this quote, "This story is for you, the reader, alone. It's about the answer to your dreams. No, it's about your dreams themselves, a pair of eyes, the color of the Mediterranean fixed on you and only you. Never mind that the circulation of the newspaper is 1.1 million. This fantasy break is brought to you by Ecstasy 90s Style, a pleasure that's entirely legal, fat-free, non-smoking, condom-wearing, red meat eschewing, iron pumping, and goes by the name of Fabio," unquote. And Fabio was indeed all those things. He didn't drink or smoke, lived a healthy lifestyle, promoted safe sex, and while he was constantly seen in the company of beautiful women, professionally and personally, he was a perfect gentleman. There's never been so much as a hint then or now of inappropriate behavior. He was a serial monogamist, but never married. He claimed that he found the one when he was very young and lost her and could never, ever truly love again, which is probably bullshit and also
very on brand.
Speaking of brands, they loved him almost as much as the women of America. He pitched for companies from Versace to Cheerios, but he's perhaps best known for being the spokesman for a brand of margarine so good that you'll see.
She was coming home to the jungle and to their wild, untamed love for butter, cut down by cholesterol until...
Darling, look what I've brought back.
I can't believe it's not butter.
It's the premier spread flavored with real sweet cream buttermilk for a fresh butter taste, but without the cholesterol.
How civilized.
I can't believe it's not butter. The taste you love without the cholesterol.
Fabio went on to do all the things non-traditional stars did in the 90s, a workout book, a workout video. He wrote his own romance novels. I don't think they were very good. He did a spoken word CD called Fabio After Dark, where according to Unsuitable, quote, in which he does not sing, but rather speaks about his philosophy on love and women between love songs of other artists, unquote.
Buongiorno. I'm Fabio. And I'm very interested in what makes romance work.
And of course, it being the 90s, Fabio had a 900 number, which, God, I tried to find so hard. I wanted that commercial. I wanted it bad, and I failed. And of course, he did TV, movies. This is from an article originally published in the Chicago Tribune. Quote, but the time has come to launch himself as an actor. His first attempts were not so Bella. In his modeling days, he auditioned for the soaps, but since he couldn't read English, that didn't work. He had a stint on the brief Acapulco Heat, but that didn't please him. He's done cameos in Spy Hard and Eddie and voiceovers, and now he's ready for a major part, an action film, but not in the Jean-Claude Van Damme mode. We're looking for something more Errol Flynn style, says Fabio's manager, Eric Ashenberg. Something romantic. He's taking acting lessons, but he's not really worried about challenging De Niro or Pacino. You know, Van Damme or Schwarzenegger, they make a lot of money, he says, but they're not great actors. It's the persona that comes across. He's also producing a TV show, a Hollywood showcase, a kind of celebrity Tupperware party, unquote. But the problem was that Fabio could not so much act when he was on screen. He mostly just played Fabio, or a thinly veiled Fabio analog. And this should not have surprised anyone who's seen his commercial work. There was a reason the only line that Fabio said was, "I can't believe it's not butter," because after that, it became pretty apparent that
he can't act.
So poor Fabio had to settle for a shitload of money. And again, from the Tribune article, a home in L.A. and New York, a Rolls Royce, a Bentley, 2 Porsches, a Mercedes, a Hummer, and enough stereo equipment to wire the moon, unquote.
That poor man.
The era of Fabio as a thing was already waning by the late 90s, but one incident became the coda for all things Fanzoni, and it was in no way Fabio's fault. Fabio took a gig doing some promotional work for Busch Gardens in Williamsburg, a huge theme park in Virginia, known for the roller coasters and a shit ton of teenagers making an ungodly amount of noise to the point that no sane adult would wish to be within 3 light years of the place. On March 30th, 1999, Fabio was on hand to inaugurate the newest coaster called Apollo's Chariot, because Fabio's physique was godlike, I guess. The Olympus theme ride is, according to Wikipedia, quote, 4,882 feet long, and is characterized by 8 airtime hills with heights ranging from between 49 and 131 feet. Riders ascend 170 feet on the chain lift hill before dropping 210 feet at an angle of 65 degrees. Apollo's Chariot has been well received, consistently ranking in the top 10 annual Golden Ticket Awards for the amusement today, unquote. And riders on this roller coaster would experience speeds over 70 miles an hour. The heights and the speed would combine to be Fabio's undoing. Fabio and an entourage of young girls dressed as tasteful Greek goddesses sat in the first car for the first official ride of the coaster. The music swelled, the cameras rolled, and the smiling Fabio took off, pulled out of the loading zone, then straight into destiny. Or rather, straight into low-flying geese at the peak of one of the ride's drops. As the coaster raced up a climb, it peaked at 170 feet in the air and at 73 miles an hour, and at a freak happenstance, a goose lined up with the perfect nose on the perfect face of Fabio Fanzoni. The impact was not captured on camera, or at least the footage has never been released.
Coward! Goddamn coward!
The LA Times has the story from 1999, quote, according to various press accounts, the hunky supermodel was coming down the first drop when a 10-pound bird flew into his face. The goose was killed, but Fabio walked away with a cut across the bridge of his nose that took a mere 3 stitches. One of his publicists boasted, this is the testament of the man's strength. Only a strong man could have survived an onslaught like this, unquote. Fabio was a professional. He rode back into the loading zone stoic with a bloody face and a car full of traumatized young Greek goddesses. Fabio years later would claim that he was not hit by the bird, but the bird had hit a camera and chunks of the now very dead bird had dealt him a glancing blow. The whole story was made up by Busch Gardens to limit their liability, which is probably what actually did happen. But as the world watched the footage of this god of a man now laid low by a humble 10-pound bird, his mystique was irrevocably shattered. Esquire magazine said, quote, despite his stoic good humor about the incident and his relatively negligible physical injury, Fabio was irrevocably hurt. Nobody would ever take him quite as seriously again, unquote. And Podfriend's Fabio became the butt of jokes from the morning shock jocks to Jay fucking Leno. Jay Leno should get hit in the face by a fucking goose. After the great goosening, Fabio began to fade away. He continued to do projects and promotions throughout the early aughts. As he slipped quietly off the cultural radar. Now officially retired, he lives a quiet life, though hopes someday to marry and have children despite being 65 years old. He sleeps in a hyperbaric chamber, which he says slows aging, along, of course, with a healthy regime of diet and exercise. And honestly, it kind of seems to be working. If he isn't the hunk he once was on the cover of Hearts Aflame today, he's still a good-looking man with a full head of fucking impressive hair. Though, you know, he's dyeing that shit. No one is that fucking lucky to not go gray on top of everything else. I got no big reveals or larger points to make about Fabio. By all I can find, he seems to be exactly what he appears to be. A decent, not particularly bright, but not totally stupid dude who was blessed by a genetic lottery and hard work with the kind of body that made women and a few men squishy in the personal parts. He came along with the confluence of a series of shifting cultural moments with the right mix of masculinity and exoticism to land himself in the hearts and masturbatory fantasies of millions of women.
Well, I never.
No, you never. Of course not. And all those Fabio-fronted books women were reading while sitting on the washer during the spin cycle were just a coincidence, huh? Look, ladies, there's no shame in burnishing the bean to old Fabio. He's a good-looking man and a decent one to boot. There's a long legacy of romance novel quietly providing let's say, outlet for women in the days before you could buy a 32 horsepower crotch growler 3000 in the appliance aisle at a Walmart. Ladies, your grandmothers and mothers had to let their fingers do the walking so you could run to mount and ride up your way to ecstasy. So don't begrudge them. They're Fabio covers.
Ooh.
Are you okay?
Oh, God. Ooh, oh, God. Oh. 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 Oh, God. Oh, yeah, right there. Oh. 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 Oh, God. Oh. Yes. 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 Yes! Yes! Oh! Oh, yes! 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 Oh! Yes! 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 Oh! 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 Oh, God. Oh.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistant's assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Spotify.
That is it for the show this week. Oh, we have fun. It's Romance Month here on the show. We're not doing a proper series. We're just sort of talking about all things love and romantic. And next week we'll be back with how we looked for love in the 80s and 90s on television. So make sure to come back in 2 and 2 for that. Speaking of coming back, rate and review this, folks, to the show so folks can find us and come back to make sure that I said what they think I just said about the spin cycle masturbation. Kick us $1 on patreon.com/whatthehellpodcast to keep our clothes clean. So, I promise not to get my grind on during the spin cycle. Do all the things Jeremy tells you to do in the closing credits. Otherwise, he's going to have to cut Gavin from the Seltzer King Sexiest Producers of 2025 calendar this year again. And so for me, Dave, so sexy it hurts Bledsoe. Producer,
I have never turned on a catwalk, and nor shall I ever.
Gavin! And all the fictional models on this show, we got to say, no, seriously, you should check out my butt. I mean, it's so sexy, it hurts. And we'll see you all next week.
And I'm too sexy for your party, too sexy for your party, the way I'm disco dancing.
What the Hell Were You Thinking stars Dave Bledsoe and features Gavin St. James and several fictional minions. The show is produced by Kimberly Steele and a part of the Seltzer Kings podcast network. You can find more information on the show on their website, whatthehellpodcast.com, or on Twitter at @thehell_podcast, or on Facebook as What the Hell Podcast. Thanks for listening.
I have no ending for this, so I take a small bow.
I want to watch Love Connection.
Seltzer Kings
Podcasts.